Pitch Black. Is it great? Pitch Black is a movie that came out in the year 2000 to mostly negative reviews, which in my mind is a downright shame. Since its release, it's been overshadowed by the rest of what I consider to be a pretty mediocre franchise. Most people aren't even aware of this film, frankly. Funnily enough, I don't think Riddick is even supposed to be the core focus of this film. He is honestly a small part of the whole, and if you see it for that, it becomes a much better movie. Admittedly, the special effects haven't aged well, and even at the time they weren't spectacular, and the cinematography is rather choppy in places. But despite those flaws, I think there's a lot more to this movie than what you might think. So let's dive in. We open the film with a long pan of a generic spaceship, with Riddick providing a voiceover introducing some of the characters, as well as himself. The opening scene establishes one of the core themes, the idea of animal instinct being a part of human nature, or in Riddick's case, the whole of his nature, at least he believes. After that, everything goes tits up and the ship begins to crash land. Here we are quickly introduced to Fry, the actual main character of this film, a tough, real female who joins Ripley as one of the only strong female characters in sci-fi action. As Fry struggles to crash the ship as elegantly as possible, she is put into the position to decide between herself and the lives of strangers. In the moment, confronted with the very real possibility of death, she tries to drop the cabin, only to be stopped by the quick acting of Olsen, who after enabling this scene quickly is removed from the story. After the crash, when the survivors gather together, they all thank Fry for saving their lives. Fry obviously feels guilty about her decision earlier now, confronted by the strangers she had nearly sacrificed. This creates a dynamic within Fry where she is compelled to protect these people no matter the cost, a feeling that escalates within her as things go from bad to worse. This character progression gives us a very real look at why someone might act as a hero. It is Fry's guilt that allows her to rise to the occasion. Her heroism isn't born through virtuosity, but rather guilt and self-loathing. Fry's path through the dark shows one of the many ways that trauma can change a person. We get many other examples from the supporting cast. We have a woman who obviously prides herself on her strength, breaking and running for her life when she should have confronted her fear instead, showing how personal determination can prove irrelevant when your life is endangered. We also have this intellectual who studies culture, art, and fine wines. However, once the lights go out, all of his intellect vanishes. Confronted with this possibility of death, his fear overwhelms reason, causing his own death, and possibly one of the stupidest moments of the entire show. Now Johns, who initially appeared to be a standard White Knight character, proves to be something far worse. As the threat to Johns escalates, his morality deteriorates, until he's ready to kill a little girl to protect himself, disregarding his humanity, embracing the survival instinct instead. He does this because the image he had worked so hard to maintain prior to this no longer matters to him since his life is now at stake. Jack, a little girl who pretends to be a boy as to prove herself capable, completely regresses after the lights go out. The strength and confidence she had exuded earlier in the film immediately evaporates and she becomes a child again, relying on others to protect her. Perhaps most interesting, though, is the Holy Man, who does not change throughout the film. From beginning to end of the film, he maintains his faith, relying on it to confront the fear that defeats the rest of the group. By framing the whore before him as a religious test on his trip to Mecca, he maintains his character despite losing his sons, brutally and suddenly. Some may take this as a pro-religion argument, but I don't think it really is. I think his character serves as a clear example of how a person can use their beliefs as a shield against reality. His unquestioning belief that this is a test beyond himself allows him to overcome the traumatic events around him. Those without that core find themselves lost in panic, losing themselves to those animal instincts. I think this is a good time to go back to Riddick, a man who views himself as an animal. His actions throughout prove to be the hardest to pin down. Initially, he portrays himself as a monster, describing a good mix for drinking blood, amongst other things. He does this because he wants to create a distance between himself and the others. This man has been a killer his entire life and has developed a persona that he uses as a defense. We learn vaguely of his troubled past, indicating very little normal human interaction. Early on, though, he shows an affinity for Jack and Fry despite his claims of being a monster. Riddick is obviously a man who's faced life and death situations many times, unlike the rest of the cast. As such, when the lights go out, it's sensible that he seems more at ease than the others. Despite his self-proclaimed selfish nature, he contradicts himself often. There are several occasions where Riddick makes decisions that endanger his own life to protect others. Yet Riddick goes to great lengths to make himself appear as a self-centered, survival-first monster to those that surround him. Then why is it we have this contradiction? His appreciation for Fry develops when he overhears her telling Jones about her dropping the cabin in that moment. Riddick sees a reflection of himself in Fry that he finds encapsulating. He projects his own beliefs onto her, finding a kinship over that strong survival instinct that he believes she and him share. Yet Riddick himself betrays his belief system when he turns around to save Jack, and when he goes back with Fry. When he first turns around for Jack, it's after a considerable amount of internal debate. We can only guess at what it was he was thinking, but in the end he seemingly revokes that survivalist heart he has clung to so far. Then he immediately abandons all of them as if he is ashamed of the fact that he protected them. Fry manages to find her way to the shuttle where she confronts Riddick about this. At first she argues and then she pleads with Riddick to return with her. Riddick quickly dismisses her argument and counters her by appealing to that survival instinct he believes she has. While Fry succumbs at first, her thoughts of the guilt she had for trying to drop the passengers at the beginning of the movie overwhelms her and she attacks Riddick in a rage. Of course, Riddick easily overpowers her and asks her,
"You die."
I would die for them.
I will just.
Intrigued, he risks his own life again so he can accompany Fry to Jack and the Holy Man. Here it seems that his motivation is to stay closer to Fry so that he can try to better understand her. During the argument, his admission that he wouldn't know how to rejoin the human race is possibly the best explanation for why he accompanies Fry. We know he sees a reflection of himself in Fry, and moments earlier we saw him betray his beliefs to protect Jack. Under the pressure of these events, even Riddick is having an internal upheaval where he finds that he is questioning the beliefs that he has clung to keep him alive for so long. Under the pretense he follows Fry, trying to understand the change in her that reflects his own internal turmoil. Unfortunately, Pitch Black isn't a happy movie by any stretch, and things don't quite work out for Riddick, yet he's still changed from what he was. All these characters have a progression far beyond most sci-fi films, and together they create a commentary on human nature that is truly stunning. Each one projects an aspect of how the worst forms of pressure can change a person in a far more human way than what most movies would bother to attempt. There's no clear heroes in this film. Everyone has their own worries and beliefs that drive them forward, responding to the unreal threat in very human ways. Some panic, some regress, others rise to the occasion through guilt, faith, or even dissociation. All of the forms we see of people failing or rising to this ordeal aren't clearly good or evil. Most of them reside in a gray area, which is where most of us fall in reality. To me, it's unbelievable that an action sci-fi flick would take the time to draw out such human characters with human reactions in this outlandish landscape. Beyond that, it does all of this progression without slowing the action for a moment. The film drives forward so fast that I think a lot of people miss these subtle developments. Admittedly, this movie has some problems with its cinematography, and the score is nothing to write home about. But the script and the acting are marvelous. The characters of this movie are so rich that Riddick has literally spawned a franchise that craps on this movie, if I'm being honest. I enjoy the rest of the series, but this movie is something else. The rest of the series lacks the subtlety and expansive characters of this film. So if you have seen the other films in this series, keep in mind that Pitch Black wasn't intended to be a franchise. It was meant to be a standalone film. As that standalone film, it is truly one of the best pieces of sci-fi out there, scoring a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's a pretty damn great film. It's a shame about some of the cinematography and some of the suspension of disbelief you're gonna have about a bit of the sci-fi, but it's so well done, and these characters are just amazing. Check it out. So that was Pitch Black. Honestly, I think that was a great sci-fi movie. I really enjoyed it. I mean, there's a bit of problems with the cinematography, but beyond that, I enjoy the soundtrack, I enjoy the acting, and I really enjoy the themes. I don't know, Jay, what did you think?
Guy like myself, watching it, pawn shop, getting my horror movies, get my Pitch Black, watched it a bunch of times growing up, didn't think about it that hard, I know what you were talking about if you brought it up with me in conversation, but now you revealed a lot of layers there.
Well, I'm a big fan, and I just really find the characters compelling, and they carry the themes of the movie, and for me it was just, you don't expect that out of what kind of looks like a cheap sci-fi horror at first, because it does. But when you look a little deeper, yeah, there's a lot there.
Shame you have to be as grand as Starship Troopers to be sort of seen twice like that before you're lumped in with the, decade of action movies. There you go. I think another one is like Pandorum that just sort of gets lumped in. Yeah, it's just a horror movie.
Yeah, well, there's a lot in that sci-fi branch, especially around the 90s, because that was when you were getting like Jason X and Leprechaun in Space, and there was a bunch of things coming out, and they are eclipsed by the staples like Aliens and Starship Trooper. But no, it stands out.
Gotta say, Leprechaun's more popular than I thought. Critters, a lot of people bring that up to me, and I'm surprised.
Yeah, that's a whole different. You know what? When we get to Halloween, we'll talk about Critters. But until then, thanks for watching, guys. And let me know what you think. Does Pitch Black get eclipsed by the rest of the series? Like, did you see Pitch Black first, or did you see Chronicles of Riddick first?
Let me know in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you liked what you saw. See ya!
See ya.